We're not reading a prophecy. We're excavating a pattern. 5,000 years ago, a civilization encoded observations about human behavior into myth. Today, we're decoding the transmission. The headline version, Gods from the Sky. The actual message, patterns in time. The Anunnaki story is the surface. The real warning is about what happens when civilizations forget they're part of a system. Every narrative has structural primitives, irreducible patterns that repeat across contexts. Here, cycles, balance, time perception. These aren't predictions, they're observed regularities. Watch how language transforms when patterns cross millennia. Prophecy becomes pattern recognition. Gods becomes system dynamics. Collapse becomes process, not event. Renewal becomes transformation, not restoration. This isn't fortune-telling. It's diagnostic medicine for civilizations. The Sumerians created a checklist. False stability, fragmented meaning, compressed time, natural feedback. How many boxes do we check? The Sumerians didn't just diagnose. They prescribed. Not commands, but protocols. The remnant function, strategic restraints, localized adaptation, relationship building. This isn't survivalism. It's civilizational medicine. The surface story thrives because it's cognitively cheaper. External blame, dramatic narrative, fixed timeline, reduced complexity. The structural message demands more. Responsibility, pattern recognition, adaptive response, sustained attention. We misunderstood the medium. These weren't prophecies. They were pattern transmissions. The Sumerians weren't predicting our time. They were describing a phase in a cycle. We happen to be in that phase. The real message isn't about what will happen. It's about recognizing where we are in a pattern that has repeated for millennia. Once recognized, the question shifts from what's coming to how do we respond. Pattern transmission received. 5,000-year cycle recognized. Response window open. Next cycle, shape undetermined. The choice, repetition or adaptation. The first structural primitive. The cycle pattern. Visualize a sine wave of civilizational rise and fall. Knowledge leads to power. Power leads to excess. Excess breeds arrogance. And arrogance precedes collapse. Look along that wave. Sumer, Rome, Byzantium. The same shapes, different contexts. The second primitive. The balance principle. The Sumerians called it me, divine laws that structure reality itself. Think of scales with order on one side, chaos on the other. Systems require maintenance, not domination. When extraction exceeds renewal, when social trust erodes, the scales tip. The third primitive, the time perception anomaly. Ancient observers notice something strange. Time feels compressed during collapse phases. Events accelerate. Institutions can't adapt fast enough. Sound familiar? Technological change outpaces our capacity to integrate it. Events outrun institutions. Consider the term prophecy. Traditional interpretation, prediction of specific future events. But the Sumerian function was different. Transmission of patterns for recognition. This isn't fortune-telling, it's pattern literacy. The ability to see where you are in a cycle that has repeated before. Consider the term gods. Modern interpretation. Literal extraterrestrials or supernatural deities. Sumerian function. Personifications of natural forces and patterns. The Anunnaki weren't visitors from another planet. They were symbolic representations of forces humans needed to reckon with. Diagnostic 1. False stability detection. Here's what the Sumerians observed. Civilization appears strongest just before collapse. Complexity without comprehension. Confidence without competence. the glow of success, masking internal fracture lines that only become visible when it's too late. Diagnostic 2, meaning fragmentation. The ancient warning, people speaking different tongues while using the same words. We call it polarization, tribal epistemology, narrative warfare. Same phenomenon, meaning fractures until shared reality becomes impossible. Diagnostic 3, time compression. The pattern repeats, events accelerate, adaptation lags. Technology changes faster than institutions can process it. The timeline fills with events, while our capacity to absorb them remains static. We're experiencing more, understanding less. Diagnostic 4, nature as responsive system. The Sumerian view. Earth reacts to imbalance, not with vengeance but with consequence. Climate change isn't punishment, it's feedback. The system responds to inputs. This is physics, not mythology. Cause and effect across ecological time. The first response protocol. The remnant function. Not heroes or saviors, but pattern recognizers. Small vessels surviving storms while large ships founder. The role isn't to restore what was, it's to preserve what matters. Recognize the patterns. Transmit what helps. The second response protocol. Restraint as wisdom. The Sumerian principle, knowing when not to act. Our culture optimizes for action, for growth, for more. But sufficiency requires different mathematics. Sometimes the wisest response is the hand that reaches for power, then deliberately withdraws. The third response protocol. Localized adaptation. Renewal begins at the margins, not the center. Small experiments. Distributed learning. Many small lights appearing as large structures fade. Don't try to save the ship. Launch lifeboats. Scale down to scale appropriately. The fourth response protocol. Relationship over hierarchy. The old age ran on hierarchy for efficiency. The next configuration runs on relationship for resilience. Networks replacing pyramids. Not centralized command, but distributed connection. The architecture of what comes next. Now we analyze the cognitive traps. Why does the surface story, gods from the sky, ancient aliens, literal prophecy, dominate over the structural message? Because our psychology prefers certain patterns over others. Cognitive trap 1. Externalization preference. It's psychologically easier to blame gods, aliens, or external forces than to accept responsibility. The arrow points outward, away from self-examination. We prefer villains to mirrors. Cognitive trap 2. Spectacle addiction. Dramatic explanations satisfy more than quiet patterns. Fireworks captivate. Slow-growing plants don't. We're wired for attention-grabbing events, not gradual processes. The sensational wins over the structural. Cognitive trap 3. Comfort in certainty. Fixed prophecies provide certainty. Specific dates. Clear villains. Defined outcomes. But patterns require ongoing attention. They demand vigilance rather than waiting. Most prefer the certainty of specific prediction over the labor of continuous recognition. Cognitive trap 4. Fatigue management. Pattern recognition is cognitively expensive. It requires sustained attention, continuous updating, resistance to easy answers. We have limited cognitive energy. The mind seeks efficiency, and simple stories are efficient. Two paths diverge before us. Path A, accept the surface story, achieve cognitive comfort, but arrive at pattern blindness, unable to see what's actually happening because the dramatic narrative obscures the structural dynamics. Path B, accept the structural message, endure the cognitive labor, but achieve pattern recognition, the ability to see where we are, what's happening, and what responses might actually help. This path costs more. It also sees more. Return with me to the original tablet. See it now not as a religious artifact, not as a historical curiosity, but as a transmission device, data encoded in myth, designed to survive millennia, waiting to be decoded by whoever needed the pattern. Patterns flow from past to present, like water finding its level. The same shapes emerge across different contexts. What the Sumerians saw in their time, we see in ours. Not because they predicted us, but because patterns repeat. That's what patterns do. The real message transmitted across 5,000 years isn't about what will happen. Prophecy, properly understood, isn't prediction. It's pattern recognition. It's the ability to see where you are in a cycle that has played out before and will play out again. Once recognized, the question transforms. We stop asking, what's coming? As if we're passive observers of inevitable events. We start asking, how do we respond? As active participants with agency in an ongoing process. Picture a spiral of civilization cycles. Each revolution traces a similar path: rise, peak, decline, transformation. But spirals aren't circles. They can move inward toward collapse or outward toward new configurations. The shape of the next cycle isn't predetermined. Our position on the spiral is marked. We're not at the beginning of a cycle, not at the peak. The diagnostics suggest we're in a transition phase. What comes next depends on recognition and response. Pattern blindness leads to repetition. Pattern recognition opens alternatives. Multiple possible futures branch from this point. Repetition. The cycle plays out as it has before, with the outcomes cycles typically produce. Or adaptation. The pattern is recognized, responses are implemented, and new configurations become possible. This is analytical archaeology applied to civilizational patterns. We've excavated structural primitives from narrative artifacts. We've mapped diagnostic frameworks across millennia. We've traced response protocols through symbolic language. This is what the transmission contains. 5,000 years of observation encoded in myth. Decoded not by believers in ancient astronauts, but by pattern analysts reading structural dynamics. The medium was misunderstood. The message waited. Now it's received. DHU investigations. Temporal Pattern Analysis Division. Mapping civilizational cycles. The pattern transmission is complete. What you do with it is the next phase of the cycle. The tablet layers separate before us. The surface layer fades, gods, floods, divine intervention. The structural layer expands, revealing geometric patterns of rise and fall. This is what we're meant to see. Not the story, but the architecture beneath it. Analysis mode engaged. Pattern archaeology proceeding. Excavation depth, 5,000 years. What we extract from these layers isn't mythology, it's methodology. A framework for understanding cycles that transcend individual civilizations. The diagnostic results appear on screen. 4 checkboxes, each representing a warning sign the Sumerians encoded. False stability, meaning fragmentation, time compression, natural feedback. As we assess our current moment, the checkboxes illuminate one by one. 4 out of 4 patterns detected. The response architecture is mapped. 4 protocols for civilizational adaptation. We've received the transmission. The patterns are recognized. The diagnostics are complete. Now the question becomes, what will we do with what we know? The next cycle awaits its shape.